Have you ever tried to keep up with someone who was much more skilled than you at a particular thing? So in 2017, I was skiing with some friends. I was probably somewhere between advanced beginner and low intermediate at skiing, but the people I was with were really good. Unlike me, they had grown up skiing and were quite comfortable with any level of slope, including the black diamond I followed them down. You know where this is going. Smack into a tree, as it were. It isn't that I didn't want to follow the run exactly like my friends had done. I just lacked the right combination of skill, confidence, and stamina to make that turn in time. And my failure was colossal. I would love to tell you that I got right back into skiing after my leg healed, only it never fully did. So skiing is one activity I have filed into the used to category. It's okay. There are other ways to stay active through winter. Following someone with greater skills is a little bit like following Jesus. I really want to because I am so compelled by how he lived, and I truly believe the world would be a better place if more people followed his example. When I am following Jesus, I am the best version of myself, but I don't always succeed because following Jesus is hard. Sometimes I fail. That's why our Bible lesson today is one I can relate to. It is a story of one disciple trying to follow Jesus and failing rather dramatically. You might even know the story. It happens to be found only in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 14. Jesus and his disciples have just fed a huge crowd of people when immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "Is it a ghost?" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Now, even if you've never read that passage before, you've probably heard one of the two popular expressions that we get from the story: walking on water and "you of little faith." Walking on water is what proves that Jesus is special, in case we had any doubt up to this point. And "you of little faith" is how Jesus addressed his disciple Peter, who lived up to his nickname by sinking like a rock as soon as the wind began to pick up and he remembered that he was walking on the water, which was technically not something he should have been able to do. This story is often used to teach just those two things. Jesus' ability to walk on water is seen as proof of his divine status as Son of God, and Peter's inability to do so demonstrates his deficiency in the faith department. Poor old blundering Peter, always the butt of the joke, guaranteed to do the wrong thing, the D+ disciple. Jesus can walk on water, but Peter, well, he's a sinker. You know, maybe if he just had more faith. But I think this story offers more nuance than just those two themes. Yes, Jesus is a marvel. I am painfully aware of the high bar he sets, thank you very much. And while it might make me feel better to pick on poor Peter, as though I myself could have done better, I don't think that's the real lesson in this story. At least, it's not the most useful lesson. I don't think that this story is meant to shame anyone for having little faith. In fact, Jesus himself once said that even just the tiniest amount of faith as small as a mustard seed, could be a powerful thing. I actually think that Peter is to be commended for having enough faith to step out of the boat, even if it didn't go so well. He was trying, he was learning, he was growing. And even after that rather embarrassing incident, He didn't give up, did he? He kept on following Jesus. Now, Peter may never have tried to walk on water again, but he didn't have to. You see, walking on water, that was Jesus' thing. I don't know why he did it. I don't know how he did it. And actually, I don't care, because the main point was not to walk on water, but to get to the other side of the lake. And the reason they were all crossing the lake was because there were people on the other side of the lake who needed healing. In the end, it didn't matter one tiny bit how they got there, as long as they did. Jesus had his own way of crossing the lake, which turned out to be the wrong way for Peter. But no big deal. They still had the boat and they got across that lake anyway. What I love about this story is seeing that even when you try to follow Jesus and fail dramatically, you don't have to give up. Peter did not drown. And after he had recovered a tiny bit from the shock and maybe from the humiliation, he got back to business and he crossed that lake to help Jesus do the healing on the other side. Peter's an example for us all, and intentionally so. Matthew's gospel sets Peter up to be the foundation of the church, that growing group of people who would aspire to follow Jesus, which includes us. Like it or not, Peter is our spiritual ancestor, and his story is our story. It's humbling, but it's also inspiring, because yes, we're going to try some things that will fail. In our attempts to follow Jesus, we are going to step out of our comfort zone, and sometimes, instead of gliding effortlessly across the water, we are going to sink. But that's okay. When that happens, we will just shake ourselves off and figure out a different way. Maybe swimming, maybe rowing, maybe water skiing. If only Peter had known a pair of skis on a faster boat. As it is, all he had was a little bit of faith, but that was enough. It was enough to get the movement going, and he shared his stories of Jesus. And most importantly, he followed Jesus' example and he taught others to do the same. I don't know whether it got easier for Peter over time, but he did get better at it with practice. You know, the book of Acts, which is the sequel to the Gospels, it is full of stories of Peter as a leader, a teacher, a healer. And in those stories, we see how Peter continued growing as a disciple, always learning how to be more inclusive, more loving, more like Jesus. I'm not sure he ever mastered the art of walking on water. The last time Peter saw Jesus across the lake, he swam to meet him, but isn't that great? He found the best way for him to follow Jesus with the skills and abilities that he had. And that's an inspiration to me as a follower of Jesus. There's so much Jesus did that I would love to do, only I do not have the skills to do it his way. Like healing people with physical, mental, or spiritual afflictions. I wish I could simply place my hands on someone and just watch the pain, the addiction, the depression disappear. I do not know how Jesus did it. And if I pretended to have those skills, I fear that my sinking would only pull others down with me, so I do not pretend to be someone I am not. If you can't walk on water, don't try to pull others into the deep end with you. But hey, I know the gifts I do have. I'm a good listener, I build trust with people, I can help others believe in their value, I can encourage people to pursue the specific type of healing they need from those with appropriate training. I'm good at teaching kids. There are Allison ways of following Jesus, right? Scaled to fit the skills that I have, however small they may seem. But this lesson from Matthew extends beyond our personal efforts to follow Jesus. Remember that Peter's story is about Peter, but it also is about the church that Peter represents. So as a community of faith, we are all called to collectively follow Jesus. And that's a powerful thing because together we can accomplish much more than any individual. Even the greatest saints of all time, think the Mother Teresas of the world, they've always had teams to support their ministry. And ministry is never one size fits all. It has to fit the team and their skills. We can be inspired by the work of incredible teams like Mother Teresa's, but not all of us will be successful on that scale. Certainly not on the first attempt. But we look around and we notice where we are. We notice what our own communities might need to thrive, and we find ways to meet those needs. Are people lonely? Are kids behind in reading and math? You don't have to walk on water to host a meal and invite people, or to volunteer an hour a week tutoring third graders. And if you happen to have a church building in the middle of town within walking distance from a school, you can do those things on a larger scale, right? It's not so much walking on water as it is building a raft and letting folks climb aboard with some help. The larger entity to which my church is connected, it's a body called the California-Nevada Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. We've adopted a 3-part vision statement: following Jesus, thriving in community, and healing the world. So I hope that the story of Peter's attempt to walk on water can give us some helpful perspective on what it means to live into that part about following Jesus. I know it seems daunting because Jesus' footsteps are awfully hard to follow, especially when they lead us beyond the solid ground and into the places we're pretty sure we don't know how to walk. But as Peter's story shows us, all it takes is just a little bit of faith and willingness to keep trying even when we fail. We might never learn how to walk on water, but if we work together, we'll still be able to row. May God bless you, and may you find your purpose in following Jesus, wherever you are and in whatever way works for you.